The night sky was unusually bright when Maya stepped out of the marine research lab for the third time that evening. She'd been working late again, cataloging water samples from the morning's dive, but something kept pulling her attention to the window. Strange lights were dancing across the horizon, not like any stars she'd ever seen. Maya had always been practical. At 28, she'd spent her whole career studying the ocean, believing only in what she could touch, measure, and prove. But tonight felt different. The lights seemed to pulse with their own rhythm, moving in ways that made her stomach flutter with an odd mix of excitement and unease. She grabbed her jacket and walked down to the beach, her boots crunching on the sand. The lights were getting brighter now, closer. What had looked like distant stars were clearly something else entirely. One particularly bright light seemed to be falling, trailing sparks behind it like a dying firework. Maya watched, mesmerized, as it crashed into the ocean about half a mile offshore. The impact sent a small wave rolling toward the beach, and then everything went quiet. Too quiet. Even the usual night sounds of the coastal wildlife seemed to have stopped. She stood there, for nearly an hour, waiting for something else to happen. Coast Guard boats, maybe, or some kind of rescue team. But nothing came. Eventually, the cold ocean breeze drove her back inside, but sleep wouldn't come. She kept replaying what she'd seen, trying to make sense of it. The next morning came gray and foggy, the kind of weather that made everything look mysterious. Maya decided to walk the beach before work, partly to clear her head and partly because she couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to check the shoreline. She almost missed him. He was lying in a tangle of seaweed about 50 yards from where she'd seen the light crash. At first, she thought it might be driftwood or debris from a boat. But as she got closer, she realized it was a person, a man, unconscious but breathing, wearing clothes that looked expensive but completely soaked. Maya's first instinct was to call 911, but something made her pause. The man looked completely uninjured despite having apparently spent the night on a rocky beach. His skin was pale, almost luminous in the morning light, and his hair was an unusual shade of silver white that didn't match his young face. "Hey," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" His eyes opened immediately and Maya felt her breath catch. They were the most unusual color she'd ever seen, shifting from blue to green to something that might have been gold, all in the space of a heartbeat. "I appear to be experiencing gravitational displacement," he said, his voice clear but with an oddly formal way of speaking. "This is unexpected." Maya blinked. Most people waking up on a beach after what was probably a boating accident would be confused, panicked, or in pain. This man sounded like he was reading from a textbook. "Are you hurt?" she asked, helping him sit up. "Do you remember what happened? There was some kind of crash in the water last night." The man looked at her with those strange, shifting eyes, studying her face as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. "Your concern is appreciated. I believe I may have miscalculated my approach. Vector." "Approach, Vector? Who talks like that?" "I'm taking you to the hospital," Maya said firmly. "You might have a concussion." "That seems unlikely," the man replied, but he didn't resist when she helped him to his feet. He moved with perfect balance, showing no signs of the disorientation someone should have after a night on the beach. At the hospital, things got even stranger. The doctors ran every test they could think of, but everything came back completely normal. His blood pressure, heart rate, reflexes, even his blood work, all perfect. Too perfect, according to Dr. Chen, who'd been working emergency medicine for 15 years. "I've never seen readings this consistent," he told Maya privately. "Usually someone who's been through trauma shows some kind of stress response. This man's vitals are like he's been meditating in a spa, not washing up on a beach." The man, who said his name was Zeth, answered all their questions politely but with that same formal, almost scientific way of speaking. He claimed he couldn't remember much about the accident, only that his transportation had experienced technical difficulties. When the hospital couldn't find anything wrong with him, they had no choice but to release him. Zeth stood in the parking lot looking around with the same curious analytical expression he'd worn all day. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Maya asked. "Family, friends, I am currently without local social connections, Zeth replied. I will adapt accordingly. Something about the way he said it, so matter-of-fact and alone, made Maya's heart ache. Despite all the strange things about him, he seemed genuinely lost. I have a spare room, she heard herself saying. Just until you figure things out. Back, at her small coastal house, Zeth's odd behavior became even more apparent. He arranged the books on her coffee table in a perfect geometric pattern. He stood at her window for 20 minutes just staring at the ocean, with an intensity that made Maya wonder if he was seeing something she couldn't. When dinner time came, he watched her cook with the same fascination most people reserved for magic tricks. He asked detailed questions about every ingredient, every technique, as if he were studying a completely foreign process. On your previous residence, Maya said carefully. Didn't people cook? Food preparation was handled differently, Seth replied. More efficiently, less individually creative. The real moment of truth came when Maya announced she was going to take a shower before bed. Seth looked genuinely confused. You intend to perform thermal regulation alone? He asked. I'm sorry. What? The cleansing process. Why would you waste the thermal energy and water resources by doing it in isolation? Maya stared at him. Because that's how people shower. Alone? It's called privacy. Zeth tilted his head, those color-changing eyes studying her again. But that seems highly inefficient. In my previous living situation, communal cleansing was standard. It optimizes resource usage and provides opportunity for social bonding. Social bonding, Maya repeated slowly. Yes. The sharing of the thermal regulation process creates stronger community connections. Doing it alone seems... He paused, searching for the word. Irrational. Maya felt her cheeks heating up. Well, where I come from, people like their privacy when they're washing. Fascinating, Zeth said, with the tone of someone who'd just discovered a new species of fish. I will need to study this cultural practice further. As Maya locked her bathroom door that night, she couldn't help but wonder what kind of place. Zeth came from where communal bathing was normal. A commune maybe, some kind of alternative lifestyle community. But even as she tried to rationalize it, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered that there was something much more unusual about her houseguest than just different cultural practices. Something that made her think of strange lights falling from the sky and eyes that changed color like the ocean itself. She was beginning to realize that Zeth might not be from any place she could find on a map. Living with Zeth was like having a polite mystery guest staying in her house, Maya thought to herself 2 weeks later. Every single day brought new questions that made her scientific mind spin in circles she couldn't explain. Take the weather predictions, for example. Every morning, Zeth would walk to her kitchen window, stare at the sky for exactly 3 minutes, and then tell her what the weather would be like for the entire day. Not just basic stuff like sunny or rainy, but incredibly specific details that made Maya's jaw drop. Light precipitation will begin at 2:47 p.m. and continue for exactly 1 hour and 16 minutes, he'd say while calmly eating his breakfast. Or wind patterns will shift from southwest to northeast at approximately 4:20 p.m., bringing a temperature drop of 7 degrees. Maya had started secretly checking his predictions against 3 different weather apps on her phone. Zeth was right. Every single time, down to the exact minute. When she finally worked up the courage to ask him how he knew, he just shrugged and said he could read atmospheric pressure patterns like other people read newspapers. Then there was his impossible knowledge about her work. Maya had been studying marine biology for years, but Zeth seemed to know things about ocean life that she'd never encountered in any textbook. Last week, she'd brought home some rare specimens from a deep-water dive, excited to spend hours identifying them in her reference books. Zeth had taken one quick look and immediately rattled off not just their scientific names, but detailed information about their mating habits, what they liked to eat, where they preferred to live, and how they communicated with each other. Information that took Maya hours of research in specialized databases to verify, and he was right about everything. How do you possibly know all this? She'd asked, staring at him across her kitchen table while her laptop displayed the same information he'd just recited from memory. I have always been fascinated by aquatic life forms, Zeth had replied in that formal way of his, which wasn't really an answer at all. But it wasn't just his mysterious knowledge that was getting under Maya's skin. In the best possible way, it was how he looked at everything with such genuine wonder, like he was seeing the world through completely fresh eyes. When she made her morning coffee, he watched the brewing process with the same intense fascination she'd had as a kid watching her grandmother make homemade bread. When birds landed in her backyard, he studied their movements with such focus that Maya found herself wondering what he was seeing that she was missing. And those eyes. Those impossible, color-changing eyes that seemed to shift with his moods. Blue-green when he was calm and peaceful, bright gold when something caught his curiosity, and sometimes a deep silver color when he spent long periods staring at the ocean. The daily shower conversation had become like a strange dance they performed every evening. Zeth would politely ask if she needed help with thermal regulation optimization. Maya would patiently explain again that people shower by themselves, and Zeth would nod with the kind of confused politeness you'd show someone who insisted on eating soup with a fork. I continue to struggle with understanding the efficiency loss, he said one evening, sitting on her couch with perfect posture, while she tried to watch a cooking show. In my previous living community, sharing resources was absolutely fundamental to proper social bonding. What kind of community was that exactly? Maya asked, muting the television. She'd been trying to get more details about his background for weeks, but his answers were always vague. Zeth was quiet for a long moment, those silver eyes focused on something far beyond her living room walls. A very interconnected one. Privacy, as you practice it here, simply did not exist. We shared everything. Living spaces, food resources, even thoughts and feelings sometimes. Thoughts and feelings? Maya felt a little chill run down her spine. Communication was much more direct. We relied far less on spoken words and much more on other forms of connection. Like what? Telepathy? Something very much like that, Zeth said quietly, and Maya noticed his eyes had shifted to that deep gold color. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by Maya's phone buzzing frantically with an emergency alert. A research vessel had sent out a distress signal about 10 miles offshore. The Coast Guard was organizing a search and rescue operation, but they needed local marine biologists who knew the water conditions in the area. I have to go help, Maya said, jumping up and grabbing her emergency response kit from the hall closet. There are people in serious trouble out there. I will come with you, Zeth said, standing up immediately. You don't understand how dangerous this could be. We're talking about huge waves, freezing cold water, and people who might be drowning. This isn't a casual boat ride. Zeth's eyes shifted to that bright golden color, and his voice became more serious than she'd ever heard it. I understand the dangers perfectly. That is precisely why you will need my help. An hour later, Maya was seriously questioning every life choice that had led her to this terrifying moment. The Coast Guard rescue boat was fighting against 12-foot waves that seemed determined to flip them over. And despite all her years of ocean experience, she was struggling hard not to throw up. The motion was violent and unpredictable, making even simple tasks nearly impossible. But Zeth stood calmly at the front of the boat like he was standing on solid ground, completely unaffected by the chaos around them. While everyone else was holding on for dear life, he looked perfectly comfortable. There, he said suddenly, pointing into the pitch-black water. 200 meters out, northwest direction. Maya squinted through her binoculars, but couldn't see anything except angry, foam-topped waves crashing in every direction. The Coast Guard captain was equally doubtful until his radar equipment confirmed debris in exactly the spot Zeth had indicated. They found the overturned research vessel with 3 survivors desperately clinging to a small emergency raft. The rescue should have been straightforward, except that the current was dragging the raft toward a jagged reef that would tear it apart within minutes. Water's too rough and dangerous, the captain shouted over the howling wind. We can't get close, enough for a safe pickup without risking everyone's lives. That's when Zeth did something that changed Maya's understanding of what was possible. Without saying a word, he dove off the rescue boat into the churning, freezing water. Maya screamed his name, absolutely certain she'd just watched him commit suicide. The waves were enormous and deadly. The current was strong enough to pull down experienced swimmers, and the water was cold enough to cause life-threatening hypothermia in just a few minutes. But Zeth moved through that violent water like it was his natural home. Maya watched in complete amazement as he swam with impossible speed and grace, cutting through waves that should have battered him unconscious. He reached the survivors in under 2 minutes, covering a distance that should have taken even an Olympic swimmer at least 10 minutes in calm conditions. Even more incredible, he somehow managed to guide the emergency raft against the powerful current, bringing it close enough to the rescue boat for the survivors to be safely pulled aboard. Then he hauled himself out of the freezing water without even breathing hard, like he'd just taken a pleasant swim in a heated pool. "How is that even possible?" Maya whispered as the Coast Guard crew wrapped him in emergency blankets. "How did you do that?" Zeth met her eyes, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely uncertain about what to say. "I have always felt very comfortable in aquatic environments. The 3 rescued researchers were treated for hypothermia and exhaustion, but they kept talking about their mysterious rescuer. They said he'd moved underwater like a dolphin, staying submerged for periods that should have been impossible for any human, and that he'd guided them through the water with strength that seemed superhuman." On the ride back to shore, Maya sat beside Zeth while her mind tried to process what she'd witnessed. Everything she thought she knew about physics, about human limitations, about what was actually possible in the real world, had just been completely shattered. "Who are you, really?" she asked quietly, her voice barely audible over the boat's engine. Zeth was staring out at the dark ocean, his eyes reflecting the moonlight in a way that seemed almost otherworldly. "I am someone who finds himself very far from home," he said, slowly. "Someone who is trying to understand your world while hoping that perhaps you might try to understand mine." Maya felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. Not from fear, but from something much deeper and more confusing. Something that felt dangerously like the beginning of falling in love with someone who might not even be from the same planet. The device was the most beautiful and impossible thing Maya had ever seen in her life. She discovered it 3 days after the dramatic ocean rescue, hidden carefully behind Zeth's neatly folded clothes in the guest room dresser. She honestly hadn't meant to snoop through his things, but she'd been looking everywhere for a phone charger and had accidentally knocked over his small pile of belongings. It looked like someone had somehow captured pure starlight and crystallized it into a smooth, palm-sized oval that pulsed gently with its own mysterious inner glow. The moment Maya picked it up, it grew warm in her hands and began producing soft, musical tones that sounded almost like a conversation. That device is not designed for human handling. Maya spun around to find Zeth standing in the doorway, his expression more serious and concerned than she'd ever seen it. His eyes had shifted to that deep silver color that usually meant he was upset about something. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly, carefully setting the device back on the dresser. "I was just looking for a phone charger and I accidentally knocked over your things. I didn't mean to invade your privacy." But Zeth wasn't really listening to her apology. He was staring at the device, which was now glowing much brighter and producing increasingly complex musical patterns. He picked it up with the practiced ease of someone who'd used it countless times before, and immediately the sounds changed, becoming more melodic and organized, almost like he was having an actual conversation. Maya watched in complete fascination. As Zeth held the device close to his face, his lips moving silently while the patterns of light shifted and changed across its surface. She could swear she heard what sounded like responses coming from the device, though not in any language she'd ever encountered. After several long minutes, the device went completely dark and silent. Zeth carefully wrapped it in a piece of soft cloth and placed it back in the dresser drawer with obvious reverence. "Maya," he said quietly, still not looking directly at her, "I think it's time we had a very important conversation." They ended up sitting on her back porch overlooking the ocean, the same exact spot where Maya had first witnessed those strange lights dancing across the night sky weeks ago. Zeth was unusually quiet, staring out at the water with an expression she couldn't begin to read. "The device," Maya said finally, unable to stand the silence any longer. "What exactly is it?" "Advanced communication equipment," Zeth replied simply. very advanced communication equipment. Who were you talking to with it? Zeth turned to look at her directly, and Maya saw something in those color-changing eyes that made her stomach flutter with a mixture of excitement and absolute terror. My research team, he said, as if those 3 words explained everything. Research team for what kind of research? For studying your planet's ocean systems and marine life. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge to everything Maya thought she knew about reality. She felt her logical, scientific mind trying desperately to reject what he was clearly implying. But too many puzzle pieces were suddenly clicking into place with frightening clarity. "You're not human," she said. It wasn't really a question anymore. "No," Zeth said calmly. "I am not human." Maya felt like the solid ground beneath her feet had suddenly become quicksand. "Where are you actually from?" "A planet that your astronomers have designated Kepler 442b. My people simply call it home. That's completely impossible. Kepler 442b is over 1,000 light-years away from Earth." Zeth smiled for the first time since she'd found his communication device. "Your species' understanding of interstellar travel is still quite limited, but you are absolutely correct about the distance involved." Maya's mind was racing at light speed, trying to process this information. Everything suddenly made perfect sense in the most impossible way. The weather predictions that were always exactly right, his encyclopedic knowledge about marine life, the way he moved through water like he'd been born in it, his complete confusion about basic human customs. "The shower thing," she said suddenly, as another piece of the puzzle fell into place. "Yes, the shower thing," Zeth agreed with something that might have been relief in his voice. "On my world, we evolved from aquatic creatures over millions of years. Water is not simply for cleaning our bodies. It is for emotional connection, for physical healing, for essential social bonding. Privacy, as humans understand and practice, it simply does not exist in our civilization. Being alone in water is..." He paused, clearly searching for the right words to explain. "It would be similar to you trying to eat a meal while completely isolated from all other forms of life. Technically possible, but emotionally and psychologically painful. So when you keep asking to share the shower with me, I am asking for basic connection and comfort, for the simple relief of not being completely alone. Your human custom of bathing in total isolation is as strange and uncomfortable to me as my request probably seems to you." Maya felt tears starting to well up in her eyes, though she wasn't entirely sure if they were from shock, fear, wonder, or something else entirely. "How long have you been here on Earth?" "My ship experienced critical system failures during atmospheric entry 3 weeks ago. The crash that you witnessed that first night was my emergency landing procedure. My research team has been working to repair the damage to my vessel, but..." He gestured toward the communication device. "They have just informed me that the repairs will require several additional months to complete. Are there others? Other aliens living on Earth right now?" "A small research team, yes. We have been studying your planet's ocean systems for quite some time, trying to understand how similar aquatic worlds can develop such dramatically different evolutionary paths. Earth's marine ecosystem is remarkably diverse and complex compared to most other planets we have encountered in our exploration." Maya wiped away the tears that had started rolling down her cheeks and tried to process the enormity of what she was hearing. "Why are you telling me all of this now? Why reveal the truth?" Zeth moved closer to her on the porch swing, and Maya caught that strange, clean scent that always seemed to surround him, like fresh ocean air mixed with something she couldn't quite identify. "Because my research team wants me to return to our main vessel immediately. They believe that my extended direct contact with a human has seriously compromised the integrity of our research mission." "And what do you believe?" Zeth's eyes shifted to that warm golden color, and when he spoke, his voice was softer and more vulnerable than she'd ever heard it. "I believe that learning to understand your species has become far more important to me than any research mission could ever be. I believe that what I experience when I am with you is something my people would call resonant frequency, a harmonic connection between 2 different life forces that creates something beautiful and new." "What does that actually mean?" "It means Zeth said, gently reaching for her hand. That I believe I am falling in love with you, Maya. And I honestly do not know what that means for either of our worlds, or for our futures. Maya looked down at their joined hands. His skin was warm and real and alien and somehow felt completely right against hers. Show me, she said quietly, making a decision that would change everything. Show you what? Everything. Your technology, your memories, your world. If you want me to truly understand who you are and where you come from, then show me. Zeth looked uncertain for the first time since she'd known him. Mental connection with a human has never been attempted before. It could be dangerous for both of us. Everything about this situation is dangerous, Maya replied firmly. But I need to see it all. I need to understand who you really are, not just what you're telling me. Zeth nodded slowly, then carefully placed his other hand against her temple. Close your eyes and try not to resist whatever you experience. The moment their minds connected, Maya's entire world exploded into sensation, memory, and impossible beauty. The visions hit Maya like massive ocean waves crashing against a cliff. 1 second she was sitting on her familiar porch with Zeth's warm hand pressed gently against her temple, and the next second, she was experiencing underwater cities that took her breath away completely. Enormous coral-like structures stretched as far as her mind could see, glowing with their own soft inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Beings that looked almost human but moved with the flowing grace of dolphins swam effortlessly through the spaces between towering buildings, their long silver hair floating around them like living seaweed in the gentle current. This was Zeth's world. This was what home looked like to him. Maya experienced his memories as if they were her own precious childhood moments. Growing up in those incredible underwater cities, learning to communicate through shared thoughts and gentle touches, rather than spoken words, playing with other children in vast kelp forests that stretched upward toward a sun that looked different from Earth's, more purple than yellow, studying the advanced sciences that would eventually bring him across the entire galaxy to study, her small blue planet. But it was the emotional memories that hit Maya the hardest, making her heart ache with their beauty. The complete connection his people shared with each other, never truly alone, always gently aware of the thoughts and feelings of those around them. The way they gathered together for communal activities, including the bathing rituals that were as much about emotional and spiritual bonding as they were about physical cleansing. When the mental connection finally broke, Maya was crying softly. Not from sadness or fear, but from the overwhelming beauty and wonder of what she just experienced. Now you truly understand, Zeth said gently, why being completely alone feels like slowly dying to me. Maya wiped her eyes and looked at him, with completely new understanding and appreciation. And now I understand why you're so genuinely confused by human privacy needs. Over the next few amazing weeks, their relationship deepened in ways Maya had never experienced with anyone in her entire life. Zeth patiently taught her simple forms of mental connection, brief moments where they could share thoughts and emotions directly without needing words. It was intimate in a way that had absolutely nothing to do with physical attraction, though that was definitely growing stronger between them two. Maya gradually learned to appreciate and even crave the small moments of connection that Zeth needed so desperately. She started leaving the bathroom door open while she got ready each morning so they could talk and share the start of their day together. She began taking long, relaxing baths instead of quick, efficient showers, letting Zeth sit comfortably beside the bathtub and share fascinating stories about his home world while she soaked peacefully in the warm water. It's not really about getting clean, is it? She realized one quiet evening as they sat together in her bathroom, Zeth's hand trailing gently through the warm bathwater, while she relaxed completely for the first time in weeks. For your people, it's about feeling connected and safe. Water carries emotional energy between us, Zeth explained, his unusual eyes reflecting the soft candlelight Maya had begun lighting during their evening conversations. On my world, shared water time is when we feel most bonded, most peaceful, most truly ourselves. Maya felt her heart racing as she looked at him in the gentle light. Would you like to join me? I mean, really join me in the water? Zeth's eyes widened with surprise and something that might have been hope. Are you completely certain? I do not wish to make you uncomfortable with our cultural differences. I'm certain, Maya said, though her hands were shaking slightly with nervousness. I want to understand your world better. I want to connect with you the way your people naturally do. What happened next was unlike anything Maya had ever experienced in her life. There was nothing inappropriate or uncomfortable about it, nothing that would make anyone blush or feel awkward. Instead, it was pure, beautiful connection in its most honest form. Zeth slipped carefully into the warm water across from her, and immediately Maya felt a sense of deep peace and emotional completeness she'd never known existed. The warm water seemed to carry their feelings back and forth between them like gentle currents, allowing them to share emotions without needing to find the right words. They didn't need to talk or explain anything. Maya felt Zeth's profound contentment, his overwhelming relief at finally being able to share this simple but essential intimacy with someone he cared about. In return, he experienced her growing wonder, her deepening love, her complete acceptance of who he truly was and where he came from. This is how love feels on my world, Zeth whispered, taking her hands gently under the warm water. Complete connection. No barriers, no walls, no pretending to be someone you're not. Maya finally understood why Zeth had been so confused by human dating customs. His people didn't approach relationships the way humans did, with gradual revelation and carefully maintained boundaries. They connected completely and honestly, or they didn't connect at all. But their peaceful, beautiful bubble was about to burst in the worst possible way. The next morning, Maya woke up to find Zeth standing at her bedroom window, staring up at the sky with an expression of absolute dread on his face. "They're coming," he said without turning around to look at her. "Who's coming?" Maya asked, though her stomach was already sinking with fear. "My research team. The main ship will arrive here within the next hour." Maya felt her heart drop into her shoes. "Does that mean you have to leave me?" "They expect me to return with them immediately. My supervisor believes that my extended direct contact with you has seriously compromised our research mission. They think I've been—" He paused, searching for the right word to explain. "Contaminated by human emotional responses." Contaminated? Maya felt anger flaring hot in her chest. Is that really what they think of us, of human feelings? My people are very different from yours, Maya. We don't form individual romantic attachments the way humans naturally do. Love, as you understand and experience it, is completely foreign to them. They see my feelings for you as a serious malfunction in my thinking. Maya got dressed quickly, her mind racing frantically to find some kind of solution. "What are you going to tell them when they get here?" "I honestly don't know," Zeth admitted, his voice heavy with sadness. "I have never defied the Research Council before in my entire life, but I cannot imagine leaving you behind forever." "Then don't leave," Maya said firmly. Zeth turned to look at her, his eyes shifting to that deep gold color that meant he was experiencing very strong emotions. "If I refuse to return with them, I become a permanent exile from my own people. I can never go home again. And if you go back with them, I lose you forever. Humans are absolutely not permitted on our research vessels, and I would never be allowed to return to Earth again." Maya felt tears threatening again, but she pushed them back with determination. There has to be another option. There has to be some other way. 20 minutes later, they could clearly see the ship approaching. From the distant horizon, it didn't look like any aircraft Maya had ever seen before. More like a giant jellyfish floating gracefully through the morning sky, translucent and shimmering beautifully in the early sunlight. "Maya," Zeth said, taking both her hands in his. "Whatever happens next, I want you to know that loving you has taught me things about connection and emotion that my people have forgotten over thousands of years. You have shown me that sometimes the most beautiful bonds are the ones that choose to exist despite differences, not because of similarities." The ship landed silently on the beach, and 3 figures emerged from it with fluid grace. They looked similar to Zeth, but moved with a cold, mechanical precision that made Maya's skin crawl with unease. When they spoke, it was in the same melodic tones she'd heard from Zeth's communication device, but somehow much harsher and more demanding. Zeth responded in the same musical language, his posture becoming noticeably more formal and distant. Maya couldn't understand the actual words, but she could definitely feel the tension crackling in the air around them. Finally, one of the beings turned to Maya and spoke in accented but perfectly clear English. "You are the human who has interfered with our researcher's mission." "I'm the human who fell in love with him," Maya replied, lifting her chin defiantly despite her fear. The being's expression didn't change at all. "Love is inefficient. It compromises proper judgment and interferes with mission objectives. Love is what makes life worth living." Maya shot back without hesitation. "Maya," Zeth said quietly, "may I present my research supervisor Kale and my fellow team members Nira and Vel. They have come to collect me for immediate return to our primary research vessel." Kale spoke again in their musical language, clearly giving Zeth direct orders. But instead of obediently complying the way they obviously expected, Zeth stepped closer to Maya and took her hand firmly in his. "I respectfully decline to return," he said clearly in English, making sure Maya could understand every word. "I formally request permission to remain on Earth as a permanent cultural liaison between our peoples." The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. Maya could practically feel the shock and disbelief radiating from the other three beings like heat from a fire. "That is not possible," Kale said finally. The argument that followed was unlike anything Maya had ever witnessed in her entire life. Zeth and his people switched rapidly between their beautiful musical language and English, their voices rising and falling like an intense debate set, to the most complex symphony imaginable. Maya caught enough of the conversation to understand that what Zeth was proposing was completely unprecedented in their entire civilization's history. "No researcher has ever requested permanent assignment to a study world," Kale said, his pale, shifting eyes fixed on Zeth with what might have been deep disappointment mixed with genuine concern. "Your emotional attachment to this human has clearly compromised your rational judgment beyond repair. My emotional attachment to Maya has enhanced my understanding of human behavior and psychology beyond anything our previous research studies have ever achieved," Zeth countered firmly. "Through her, I have learned about individual bonding patterns, cultural adaptation processes, and the possibilities for genuine interspecies cooperation. This knowledge could benefit both our civilizations immeasurably." Maya felt a sudden spark of inspiration, like a light bulb turning on in her brain. What if you're looking at this situation completely wrong? All four aliens immediately turned to stare at her with varying degrees of surprise, and Maya felt her knees go weak with nervousness. But she forced herself to continue speaking. "You're treating this like Zeth is abandoning his research responsibilities. But what if he's actually advancing them in ways you never considered? What if studying human relationships and emotions from the inside gives you far better, more accurate information than just watching us from the outside could ever provide?" Nira, who had been completely silent until this moment, spoke up with obvious curiosity. "Explain your reasoning more clearly, human Maya." Maya took a deep breath and tried to organize her thoughts. "I'm a marine biologist. I spend my life studying ocean creatures and their behavior patterns, but I could never truly understand dolphins or whales by just watching them from a research boat on the surface. To really comprehend their behavior, their complex social structures, their intelligence and emotional capabilities, I would need to swim with them, interact with them directly, become part of their world for an extended period." She gestured meaningfully between herself and Zeth. "That's exactly what happened here. Zeth didn't get contaminated by human emotions. He gained direct access to them. He learned things about our species that no outside observer could ever discover through distant study." Maya could see Kale considering her words carefully, his expression becoming more thoughtful and less dismissive. "And what exactly would you propose as an alternative arrangement, human Maya?" "Let Zeth stay here as your official cultural liaison and primary researcher. Let me work directly with him as his human counterpart and research partner. Together, we could provide insights into human-alien cooperation and understanding that could completely revolutionize how both our species approach each other." "You would be willing to work formally with our research team?" Vel asked, speaking for the first time since arriving. "If it means I can stay with Zeth and help our peoples understand each other better, then absolutely yes." The three visiting researchers moved away from Maya and Zeth, communicating in rapid, intense musical tones. Maya couldn't understand the actual words, but she could definitely feel the intensity and importance of their debate about the future. "What do you think they're saying to each other?" she whispered quietly to Zeth. "They are discussing the potential scientific value of your proposal versus the risks of allowing me to remain here permanently," Zeth replied in a low voice. "Kale is concerned about setting a dangerous precedent that other researchers might follow. Nira thinks the research benefits might actually outweigh the traditional risks. Fel is worried about what the High Council back home will say about such an unusual arrangement." After what felt like several hours but was probably only 10 or 15 minutes, Kale turned back to face them with a formal expression. "We propose a trial period for this arrangement," he said officially. "1 complete Earth year. Zeth will remain here as our cultural liaison, working directly with human Maya to develop new protocols for human-alien interaction and cooperation. At the end of this trial period, the Research Council will carefully evaluate all results and determine whether to make the arrangement permanent or terminate it." Maya felt her heart leap with hope, but Zeth still looked concerned about something. "And if the Council ultimately decides against continuing the arrangement? Then you return immediately to the ship, and all official contact with Earth is permanently severed." It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was definitely a real chance for them to prove themselves. Maya looked at Zeth hopefully, and he nodded, with growing confidence. "We accept your terms," they said together. 6 months later, Maya stood in the living room of their amazing new house, watching Zeth carefully arrange their combined belongings with his usual precise geometric attention to detail. The house was unlike anything she could have imagined a year ago, built with a fascinating combination of human architecture and alien technology. It featured a beautiful central bathing area that perfectly mimicked the communal water spaces of Zeth's distant homeworld. The daily ritual of sharing bath time had become the absolute foundation of their relationship and their happiness together. Every morning and evening, they met in the warm, gently circulating water to connect emotionally, to share their thoughts and experiences from the day, and to simply be together in the way that felt most natural and comforting to both of them. Maya had learned that Zeth's need for connection wasn't just emotional preference, it was actually biological necessity. His people literally needed the close company of others to maintain their mental and physical health. Privacy, the thing Maya had once considered absolutely essential to her well-being, had become something she could choose to enjoy when she wanted it, rather than something that defined her entire existence. Their work together was producing groundbreaking results that excited researchers on both worlds. Maya's studies of interspecies communication were opening completely new areas of marine biology research, while Zeth's detailed insights into human behavior were revolutionizing his people's understanding of individually based societies and emotional structures. Most importantly, they had proven beyond any doubt that love really was a universal force that could bridge any gap between different worlds and species. "The final council transmission comes through today," Zeth said, interrupting her happy thoughts. Maya nodded, trying to hide her nervousness. 6 months had passed incredibly quickly, and now their entire future together hung in the balance of a decision made by beings she'd never met, on a world she'd never seen. The communication device activated at exactly 3:47 p.m., glowing with the familiar beautiful patterns Maya had come to associate with important messages from Zeth's home world. Zeth held it carefully, his expression serious and focused as melodic tones filled their living room. Maya watched his face intently, trying to read his emotions as the message continued for several long minutes. His eyes shifted through several different colors, finally settling on a warm, bright gold that made her heart skip with hope. "What did they say?" she asked breathlessly the moment the device went silent. Zeth set the device down very carefully, then turned to her with a smile that lit up his entire face with pure joy. "The Research Council has approved our arrangement," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Permanently. They want to establish Earth as the first official human-alien cultural exchange site in the galaxy, with us serving as the primary liaisons and coordinators." Maya felt tears of pure happiness streaming down her face as Zeth pulled her into his arms and spun her around their living room. But there's even more good news, he continued excitedly. They want to offer selected humans the opportunity to visit our world, to establish true diplomatic relations and cultural exchange between our species. Does that mean? It means, my beloved Maya, that we have not just saved our relationship, we have opened a permanent bridge between two entirely different worlds. That evening, they sat together in their shared bath as they did every day, the warm water carrying their emotions and thoughts back and forth between them like the most gentle current. Maya reflected on how something that had once seemed so strange and confusing to her, Zeth's absolute insistence on communal bathing, had become the beautiful symbol of their deepest intimacy and connection. I still can't believe you thought showering alone was completely irrational, she said, laughing softly with pure contentment. I still think it is, Zeth replied, pulling her closer against his chest. Why would anyone consciously choose isolation and loneliness when they could choose connection and love instead? Maya kissed him gently, tasting the salt of happy tears on both their lips. Maybe that's the most important thing we've learned together. Sometimes what seems irrational to one person is exactly what another person needs to feel complete and whole. And sometimes, Zeth said, his color-changing eyes reflecting the soft candlelight that had become their cherished evening tradition, love is actually the most rational and logical thing in the entire universe.